share things, that'd be great. You know, this year, this July 4th, is the 250th anniversary of the signed Declaration of Independence, and so this whole last year and everything has been focusing on America 250. There's America 250 Commission out there that's let's have a party, let's celebrate our country, and so actually Stand Up for Idaho and KID 106.3 and the Joe Lynn Thomas Show have actually been doing what a historical minute, and it's an advertisement. Actually, Cindy's the one that does it. She does a great job. She reads a 1 minute ad that tells a little bit about what happened roughly 250 years ago this week, if you will. And also what happens is, like tomorrow night on the Joe Lynn Thomas Show, a couple of ladies from Stand Up for Idaho will be on the Joe Lynn Thomas Show talking a little bit about what happened 250 years ago on her segment. So I ask you to tune into them. That's at 5 o'clock on KID 106.3. Also, Stand Up for Idaho has this flag. We're actually raffling this off. We will raffle it until 4th of July, and then we're going to pull and decide who wins it at that time. So it's a beautiful wood carved flag. We think it's one of a kind. You won't find another one in this country. We had it made especially for us. Raffle tickets are $20 a piece if you're interested in it. One other thing too is we do have these America 250 hats. We actually have one left. If you got like a hat or whatnot like that, I suggest your donation about $20 would be good, and you can walk away with the hat tonight. So another quick thing is, when we started Stand Up for Idaho, I didn't know how to set things up and whatnot. So we were nonprofit and all that, but over the years we learned what we can do and can't do and all that. But what we ended up doing was became what's known as a 501c3 charitable organizations. And so now donations and everything to us are tax deductible. If you needed something for a tax some tax breaks or whatever, you can donate to us. So that would be great. And if you'd like to do that, we'd really encourage you to do so, because it's not necessarily inexpensive to do all these things. Next week, if you're a home educator, homeschool person, whatnot, there's actually the East Idaho Home Educators Conference in Pocatello next week, and next Friday and Saturday. And Stand Up for Idaho was invited to come down there and talk to them about what we do, and have a booth and talk about our Constitution Camp for Kids. And so we will be down there. We'd like to, if you can find your way to Pocatello and whatnot, stop in and say hi to us. Okay, real quick, next week we're going to have Brad Butters and Daryl Kerr on for an update of what's happening with Idaho's water. Idaho's a big, the water in East Idaho and all that. We had a big scare a little while ago, a year ago, and made us all pay attention. Well, Brad is the manager of the Bonneville-Jefferson Groundwater District, and Daryl is chairman of everything else. He's chairman of the Enterprise Canal, chairman of the Rising Reservoir Mitigation Incorporated, and he's a member of what's known as the Committee of Nine. And they're the 9 people that run the Snake River. They'll tell us what's going on. And in fact, they this week are attending the annual Water Users Association convention in Boise. And so they're finding out what the heck's going on and all that. And they're going to come and talk to us next week give us an update on what's happening in water. And that's important for us to all understand. So I encourage you to come next week. So I'll get on tonight. Tonight's an open mic session. Stand Up for Idaho started out originally because, I didn't know what was going on. I had some things happening with COVID and the election and all that back in 2020, and I don't know what's going on. And so I just started talking to people. a few people, and if we ended up in a few of us sat around a round table and started talking about what our concerns were, and then they grew a little bit more, and it grew a little bit more, and that's what it all started from, is us being able to say what's on our mind. And so tonight I wanted to take us back to us. We've had some good speakers and good dialogue and all this, but what's on our mind? What's on your mind? And so I think that we're going to try to actually have this fairly routinely, what's on your mind, because you are what matters. And you have concerns, and Stand Up for Idaho wants to be able to help you let your concerns be known. And so for that, tonight, like I say, it's an open mic. If you have something, we'd like to have you come up on this row and sit up on this row and just take your turn. We'll let somebody come up first, talk to them for a few minutes and stuff, and then when they get done, the next one. And please don't hog the mic or anything, but let's have a little bit of a discussion and try to find out what's going on. Rod Shurtleff and I are going to sit up here and just sort of moderate and talk and help encourage things. And so with that, I'm going to ask Rod to come on up, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And actually, our good friend and a guy that's actually that's been coming to Stand Up for Idaho since near the beginning, Dennis Summers, has traveled from Rexburg to Idaho Falls almost. He hasn't missed too many meetings. I'll just put it that way, okay? And when he heard we were going to have an open mic, he got a hold of me and he says, Doug, I have some things I'd like to say. Can I do it? And I said, absolutely. So I'm going to actually turn it over. I'm going to invite Dennis to come on up, and I'm going to say, Dennis, if you could please just stand here, talking here, and look over towards the camera. That way people can see us. And we're going to let Dennis do some things. He actually has some handouts.
Can you pass those out to the members of the audience?
Yep, and I'll pass some of these out, and then I'll get up here with that. But I'm going to turn it over to Dennis right now, and let's give Dennis a big hand for being willing to kick this off. Thanks, Dennis. It's all yours.
Okay, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. When I retired from the oil field, I decided, what is there to do? And my friend, he asked me to go to a meeting of a political group, and I got involved, and I thought, boy, this is pretty exciting. My daughter, she took me to a restaurant here just recently that in the lobby, it had a sign that said, warning, retired person on premises, knows everything, and has plenty of time to talk about it. And Catherine goes, that sign is put there for you, Dad, and guys like you. When we get older, we do have more time to read. I often go to Boise every year. I have a sister who lives over there, so I can go over there for a couple of weeks. And it doesn't cost me a lot of money because I can stay at her house and I just have to pay the gas driving back and forth. I love to go and talk to our politicians. I've also been told and taught that people remember 10% of what you say, but they'll remember 50% of what you see. So I'm big into giving people letters. The letters that you're going to receive are the ones I gave to all of our politicians over in Boise, along with a lot of the interns over there. Many of the politicians would look at that report about the SNAP fraud in red states, and they'd look at me and go, government has no incentive to save money because you're spending somebody else's money. I think what motivates most of us to get involved in politics is our love of our family. There's a poem that I want to tell you called Little Boy Blue. The little toy dog, he's covered with dust, though sturdy and staunch he stands. And the little red soldier, he's covered with rust, and his musket molds to his hand. Time was when the little toy dog was new, and the little toy soldier stood fair. And that was the time when our little boy Blue kissed them and placed them there. Now don't you go till I come, he said, and don't you make any noise. Then trundling off to his trundle bed, he dreamt of his pretty toys. Now while he was dreaming, an angel's song awakened our little boy blue. Now the years are many, and the years are long, and still the tiny toy friends stand true. Ah, true to little boy blue they stand, still in the same old place, awaiting the touch of a little hand and the smile of a little face. And they wonder while waiting the long years through, in the dust of that little chair, oh, what has become of our little boy blue since he kissed us and placed us there. You know, in this battle that we have here on earth, I call it the battle between good and evil. We are standing like those little toy soldiers, like the little toy dog. We are declaring what we know is right. I think when we hear a politician lying to us, we kind of sense that. And most of the time, politicians do talk in doublespeak. I think it's a blessing that you guys are so involved in politics that you're willing to stand up for what's right. You're willing to be faithful and true in the long run. And it's not going to end anytime soon. I'm so thankful for my family. I'm so thankful for guys like Doug who are willing to educate us, who are willing to say, stand up for what's right, study what's right, and then share what you have learned with others. As a precinct volunteer in Precinct 34, I'm always asking, what are your main political concerns? Many young families look at me and they go, Dennis, we are so busy just trying to raise our kids. It is something I have to work constantly to make enough money to buy gas and food. He says, I'm glad you're fighting the battle on politics because I just don't have time. And I appreciate that struggle that they're having. I often talk to young families who tell me, how do you afford a house when a starter home is $300,000? I remember my first home that I bought in 1982, and I had 3 children at the time. I paid $25,000 for that house. I had a little I could pay down, and my house payment was $179 a month. I thought it was a little bit of a struggle back then, but my son, he just bought a new home, and he has 3 kids. And he had an old home that he could sell, but he was telling me, Dad, this house payment is way tough. And I'm sure he's paying around $2,700 a month because he signed up on the high interest rate of close to 6.5%. I think there is probably an overall plan to try to destroy America. And I think we have to do our part to say what we know is right and to try to tell our politicians, quit taxing and spending like you're a drunken sailor. Thank you for your time, and I hope you guys will all stand faithful and true. Thank you.
Hey, Dennis?
Yes.
So I got some context to put your letter online. Or you want to kind of discuss what's on the screen?
Oh, yeah, I was over in Boise, and when I was there, I composed this letter. And I gave it to all of our politicians over there and many of the aides. And my first concern was about forest fires. Brent Ritchie and I, we've been members of the Upper Valley ATV Club for like 15 years. And we take people on rides and we go all kinds of fun places. One year we went to all the historic mine sites that are in our region. And we went to a place down by Gray's Lake. And I had no idea there was even a mine there. It turned out that that was the largest producing mine in Idaho's history. We love to go up in the Birch Creek country. Now here, probably in the last 7 or 8 years, come about the 1st of July, the forest fire smoke is so dang thick and heavy, you're lucky if you can see 5 miles. But if you're up on top of Sawtell and you're there in May, you can see 150 miles. And all you have to do is turn your head 90 degrees and you can see Idaho, Montana, and then Wyoming. But when the forest fire smoke is so dang heavy, now I am pleased to report that the Idaho legislators and the starting of the Republican winter meeting, they talked about forest fires. Trump has also issued a mandate to the federal forest department that they need to start harvesting more trees. Brent and I were on a ride up by Victor, Idaho, and there was a grove of trees there that was 100% dead. Most of the trees were 3 or 4 inches in diameter, and I took a picture of that grove of trees. You know, we had a log pole furniture company in Driggs that went out of business because the Forest Service won't let them go out and harvest those trees. It irritates me because when I was a kid, we had all these lumber businesses. You know, the stud mills and the truss mills, and a lot of guys made their living off from the forest. Then we got the idea we better lock everybody out of the forest. All the little worker bees who would go out there and collect wood to burn in their wood stove in the wintertime, all of a sudden, yep, you can only collect out of these old slash piles that are 10 or 15 years old. And so a lot of guys just gave up on it. And of course now we have so much dead trees that when a fire starts, they can't put it out till the winter fires. I do think we are getting momentum now, even by the Idaho legislators, to say we've got to do something about it because it's destroying our scenic beauty. And what would you rather see, a 35-acre clear cut or a 10,000-acre scorched earth? I'm all for the 35-acre clear cuts.
Okay. Here, let's use.
Yeah, just a quick comment. Yellowstone years ago, it just sounds just like it. All those dead trees, they just left in there. Wouldn't let anybody harvest them. And look what happened.
That what a tragedy, you know. Wasn't it Ronald Reagan who said the government is not the solution, they're the problem? The other thing I referenced was hunting. I have a friend and family member. He's a disabled veteran, so he has a lot of time on his hands, and he's always tried to go and harvest a wild animal, a deer or an elk. And this year he had a late season hunt between Ashton and Spencer, Idaho, and it was like into the middle of December. In my younger days, when I was actively hunting, that would have been like shooting fish in a barrel. Kevin said when he got out there, he said, I saw more wolf tracks than I saw elk tracks. You know, the report from a bunch of the guides who used to sell a guaranteed elk hunt, and they would get $4,000 or $5,000 for it. They said, we can't guarantee it anymore. Do you know the elk population in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem has plummeted to 2,000? If you go back 20 years, the elk population was 20,000. Now, they're both extreme, but we can't seem to find that middle ground. The wolf population, the environmentalists estimated that 500 would be the ideal population in Idaho. They now estimate we have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000. And they did pass a law allowing it to be legal to hunt wolves with helicopters and airplanes, but it's such an expensive way to hunt that it's not very successful. We're trying to encourage our politicians to allow government trappers to bait and trap those wolves and keep the population down so that we can have some wildlife. Well, I appreciate you guys, and were any of you guys hunters? It's getting to be a tough thing to do. Hunting used to be the poor man's way to help feed his family. Now, you got to be a pretty rich guy to afford to go out there. And Kevin went out for 22 days. He said the closest thing I got to see to shoot at was 800 yards away, which he thought, it's too risky. I better not try it. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Like, anybody have any comments or questions for Dennis? You know, we're new at figuring out how to do this, and what we want to try to do is, you know, make sure that those at home can see who's doing things and whatnot. And so, if you have a question, you know, come up. Ben, can I have you come up here? Just a comment here, okay.
So many years ago, I was the senior agricultural credit approval officer for the nation's 7th largest bank, which was located in Boise, and we went out on a field day, and we got with the Forest Service, and we were talking about fires. And this was the message that the forest rangers told me, that in the old days, there were 10 trees per acre, and they were different trees. They were trees that didn't burn well, or they had their branches up, and when the fire came, it just went through and got the brush. But when those original trees were cut, those species didn't come back, and we had 100 lodgepoles after that. And so his recommendation is directly what Dennis has been saying. You got to go in and thin that stuff out, or you got a problem. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you. Another question over here? Comment? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dennis. I appreciate it. So, anybody have any other, any comments or concerns? Want to come up and talk, or just give us a thought what your concerns are? No, come on up. Don't be shy.
Well, I wanted to talk about the universal sin, which is pride. And I believe that it's narcissism. I never knew what narcissism was at all, but in 2018, I decided to look it up. And anyway, it changed my life forever in a good way. Today, we break a silence that too many endure behind closed doors. We shine a light on a kind of hurt that confuses your soul, wounds your heart, and yet leaves no apology. The kind of pain where someone can shatter your spirit and then smile like it never happened. Today we uncover the truth behind a behavior that has broken families, silenced voices, and left many questioning their worth. This is not just psychology, this is warfare on your identity. Let's talk about why narcissists hurt you and then act like nothing happened. Narcissists prioritize perception over reality. This is one of the most essential truths to understand. If you're ever going to heal from the confusion, chaos, and emotional roller coaster they bring into your life, the narcissist doesn't live in the same emotional world as you. They don't process relationships through the lens of honesty, growth, or mutual care. Instead, everything they do is filtered through one obsessive and compulsive drive. How do I look? Not in terms of physical appearance alone, but in terms of how they are perceived, respected, feared, admired, or envied by others. This is why you can be bleeding emotionally after something they said or did, and yet they act like nothing happened. It's not that they forgot, it's that they've convinced themselves that the damage they caused doesn't matter as long as no one sees it. Their highest priority is never the relationship, it's always their image. This is what makes narcissistic abuse so disorienting. Because in your world, when someone hurts you, there's an expectation of remorse, accountability, or at the very least, acknowledgement. But in their world, those things only happen if it enhances their reputation or earns them something. And if owning their behavior puts their reputation at risk, they will deny it, deflect it, and eventually blame you for even bringing it up. Perception is their reality, and that's not just a clever phrase, it's a strategy. Narcissists learn early in life that controlling how others view them gives them power. They might have grown up feeling invisible, invalidated, or overlooked. So they overcorrected by constructing a false identity that demands attention, admiration, and praise. But the key word is false. It's a mask. And behind that mask is someone terrified of being seen as weak, wrong, or average. So everything becomes a performance. Relationships to them are not about love, they are about leverage. They calculate their actions based on how it will be perceived. They'll give gifts publicly, but withhold affection privately. They'll say all the right things in front of another, but withhold empathy when you're alone. Why? Because they are more interested in appearing righteous than actually being righteous. They want the credit of being a good person without the character to actually be one. This is also why they are so skilled at creating two different versions of themselves, the public self and the private self. The public self is charming, charismatic, helpful, generous, but the private self, that's the one you know. That's the one that lies, manipulates, gaslights, criticizes, and then acts like you're the problem for being hurt. I could go on and on and on, but I grew up with a father who I witnessed every day would belittle my mother, make fun of her, mock her, make fun of the food. I could go on, but once I became a wife, it all made sense and hit me pretty hard because all of a sudden I became the mother and went into that role, and my husband was doing all the same tactics and things, only it was a little bit more different. It was very calculated and hard to put my finger on. But my spirit knew something was wrong the first week of marriage. 16 years later, I did fully awake, but that's after a lot of hurt. This can be applied to what we see in leaders. You see it in tyrants. You see it in World War II. You see it in the scriptures. You see it in politicians today. And they're very, very good at covering and lying. But I think if we were able to, I'm not sure how to find out if someone is a liar or not. But I think that their actions speak louder than their words. And I'm really grateful to live in this time with Trump and with pretty bold people like Charlie Kirk. And I am teaching my kids to be bold and confident and happy. And I really want them to be very rich so that they don't struggle like so many are. And it's an exciting time to be alive. The last thing I will say is this. In my lifetime, I've been wanting to be a part of the 2% instead of the 98%. The 2% are people that are multimillionaires and up. And I just had this desire to do that. But my husband certainly was doing psychological tricks to stop me from making money so he can control me more. But, now I know that. Figured that out last year. So the exciting thing is that 2% has grown to almost 8% since the year 2012. That means that it has quadrupled. And there are 4 times more multimillionaires in America than there ever have been. And it used to be the 1% and then the 2%, and that was it. And it stayed there for 1900s till 2012. But now with the internet, you've got way more opportunities to earn money, and that's very exciting. So if they can become rich, I believe, as Brian Tracy says, anybody can become rich, and it's very exciting. That's all. Thanks.
Ben, thank you. Very, very good. I was very heartwarming. Fact is, and I just there's so much truth in what she's saying, and especially, and I'll just throw it over into the political side a little bit more. She mentioned a little bit. A lot of our politicians, a lot of people, why are they doing what they're doing? And that'll be the question. Are they really doing it for you? Okay, or are they doing it for themselves? And it's hard to sometimes see through the smoke. But if you I believe it like this: if you give somebody enough time and enough opportunity, they're going to expose themselves about how they truly are. And from my perspective, that's a bit what Stand Up for Idaho's about. Is let's bring everybody in, let's show everybody in all this, and then they can hopefully, they will expose themselves. But we need to be aware of everything that she just said. So anybody have any questions for her? You willing to take a question or two? Okay. Any comments, Rod, or anything?
So how many kids do you have, and how old are they?
I have 4, 16, 14, 12, 10. Yeah. And I stayed home, and I homeschool them, and yeah.
Well, I think
It's been
that's
good. It's been a good life. Hard, but good. Yeah, they're good kids, aren't they?
I'll bet they are. Well, I think what you're talking about is more common than one might think.
Tragically.
Yeah, because I know of a couple of families myself that have been tragically affected by that, and so I appreciate you bringing that forward.
Thanks. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let's give her a big hand. That was great. Somebody else have a comment. What's your concern? It's something. Brad, what's bugging you? I'm going to put you on the spot. Come on up here, yeah. Or what are you, not necessarily bugging you, but what are you worried about, I guess, so. What concerns you?
Well, if you look at a little bit of history going back, prayer was taken out of school in 1962, public schools. They took Bible reading out the following year. If you notice the decline in this country, the hatred that's happened, it seems like it really happened directly after that. Now, I know there are states, they don't mandate Bible teaching or prayers in school, but they allow it now, where they weren't allowed it before. I don't know what's going to happen in those states, but I think just life will probably get a little bit better. Now, when I talk about the community here and our city government here, this is what I've seen. We used to have a nativity scene at the corner of Park and B Street. It was beautiful, serene, nice. Go to it. Well, it's gone. It'll never come back. The last 4 words of the oath given to police officers, firefighters, city council people, and the mayor, it's gone. So help me God. It's no longer said. Not even asked. You don't have to force somebody to say it, but they're not even asking people to say it. You have to say it in court. All politicians say it across the nation up to the President of the United States. But here, those words are gone. There was a disclaimer put on the 10 Commandments on the Greenbelt. The POW MIA flag was ordered to be taken down until the American Legion really complained about it and really, excuse my French, bitched up a storm. Then they put it back. City employees were actually ordered on an email from the HR director back in the day. Wasn't that long ago, but maybe 15 years ago or 10 years ago. We do not say Merry Christmas in the public's eyes, because we might offend somebody. That order went out citywide on a citywide email. I was a city employee. One of my coworkers replied to everybody. Did a reply all. He said Merry Christmas. All right? So the HR director called him and says, you will be in the city attorney's office with me and yourself to explain your email. And this actually happened. Well, the city employee says, fine, I'll be there with my attorney. Well, wait a second. Why do you need an attorney? Well, when he said that, he got a phone call shortly afterwards, says, don't show. They left the email alone. But we still had that order saying, do not publicly say Merry Christmas in public. It was crazy. We used to have a Christmas light celebration or a Christmas parade. We now have a thing called Festival of Trees, Festival of Lights. I'm not saying these are bad things to celebrate. It's just like we've lost a lot of things that Christianity gave us. And that's here locally. When I tell people in other states this is Idaho Falls, they don't believe me. I says, look it up yourself. I'm not lying. So these things have always bothered me. I'm not sure how we can get a lot of this stuff back, but I know some states are now allowing Bible reading. They put the Ten Commandments back up on the board. It's not mandated, but it's allowed. So, and I'd like to see more of that happen in the future.
All right, very good. Any other, Dennis, you know you need your microphone. I'll go.
So there's been a lot of news stories lately about prisons that are using faith-based Christianity to help prisoners, and their success rate of keeping those people from recommitting crimes are more than twice as high as any other program they've ever tried. And what you're saying, I think, is very true. When you take the Christian teachings out of everyday life of love your neighbor and treat your neighbor the way you'd like to be treated, and it's not so much the policeman you should worry about, but it's that judgment we'll have someday when we stand at the pearly gates.
Amen. My mother was actually part of that years ago before she passed away. She used to travel over to the Boise area and do Christian ministry inside the prisons.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. Anybody else have a comment or a question that they want to say?
I have a comment. I don't know if any of you have heard of the book that Peter Schweizer has just come out with. I think it was came out today, actually. It's called The Invisible Coup. You heard about that? Yeah, and that is a very disturbing phenomena that he has uncovered, basically indicating that the Chinese have at least 107 different station places in California where they're doing this, where they many of the Chinese communist elite are basically impregnating, probably through in vitro or whatever, American women, and I'm sure they're getting paid for it. Haven't read the book yet, but then as soon as these babies are born, and with the law the way it is now, they are now American citizens, but they're taken back to China and raised in China is the idea, and then they are sent back to infiltrate into our society. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of Chinese. And so that is very disturbing. The whole goal, according to Peter Schweizer, is to change the culture of the United States of America.
That's an interesting thought. Any other comments or questions? Melody.
Well, this goes kind of deep down in the rabbit hole with that. As one who has been under kind of a 41-year fog from a pretty prideful couple of men, it's easy to manipulate women. Very easy. We've got some of us have kind hearts, and I'm not sure where to go with this, except that there's a lot of men that do need to rise up. There's a lot of women that it's hard to rise up, but we do need a lot more men that need to protect women. And instead of going against them and all the things that they're doing, this is why I wanted to be rich, was to go against those sex traffickers for these children that are being raped 40 to 60 times a day. Most of them don't make it. And this is millions and millions of kids across the globe. And I think if we get angry about that to the point to take action, we can get somewhere. The really neat thing about the internet is that someone can put up a cause and then it'll be shut down by the time it reaches 1 million on a GoFundMe page. That's the power of the internet. People can bring in millions very, very quickly if somebody puts their heart to that. I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but I do know people do it. There's a guy named Charity Water. Man, he's done wonderful things in Africa, but it's easy to manipulate women. And the Stockholm Syndrome is real. It's sad. I lived it. I woke up last year. I'm 41 years old. I have lived a type of hell I hope not a lot of women go through. But it just is the world we're in. There's a lot of women that I can't fathom that. But it's true and it's sad. And the more men that rise up, the better everything will be. The more women that take care of their kids, certainly the better it'll be. Public school is a menace. It's a parasite. It's poisonous. And every week I get more stories from these kids in high school that would terrify you. And every day I am grateful that I did what I did. I chose in 2012, I think it was 2010, I chose I'm going to homeschool my kids. And 14 years in was when I went, I have no regrets. I did up until then because we had no money. We were on welfare for 10 years, and I hated that. It was humiliating. But everything that was bad is used for good now. Sorry, I went on and on. I'll stop.
Thank you. You know, oh, sorry. Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Can I make a comment up there?
You can bet, absolutely. If you want to go up there, definitely.
That would be best because then we can see you on camera.
So it's interesting listening to this and sort of seeing some of the political aspects of what's happened over the course of the last 4 years that we've now lived in Idaho Falls. But I was listening, or I was not listening, I was reading Yeats' poem the other day, where part of and it's a very famous poem, so I'm not doing anything super profound here, but there's 2 lines in it where he says, the best lack all conviction, and the worst are full of passionate intensity. And it keeps coming up again and again for me because I believe that some of what we're talking about here has a process aspect to it that people find boring, but is incredibly important, because if we are not thinking about, 1, voting ourselves, 2nd, getting people who are either like-minded or people that we can persuade to vote for sane and sensible policies and issues, and or if we cannot find within ourselves the ability to maybe run for office or go out and talk to people and promote things that are sane and sensible, then to a certain extent we have ourselves to blame, because we are lacking conviction and we are allowing people to have the passionate intensity of bad things. I was thinking about the mayoral race that just occurred, and whether or not you were on one side or the other, what was worrisome to me was that we had a very low turnout of the people who voted in the mayoral race for the first run. And then there was a runoff, and there were even less people who turned out to vote in the runoff election. And I just wonder whether or not we have people in our community right now who actually are representative of the people who who we actually would like to represent us. And if we don't, it is on us to take responsibility for thinking about whether or not we did enough to get people to turn out, whether we got enough to turn out ourselves. And that's on a local level. And if we have the aspect of things that are very much either not going wrong in our communities or are bending towards that way, I would just encourage all of us to become, and the people who are in this room are active. So I'm actually not talking necessarily to you as a pejorative. What I'm saying is it is incumbent on us to go out and make sure that we are persuading our friends and neighbors, persuading the people in our community to become active, to become part of the body politic in a way that we used to be decades ago, and in a way where we're not any longer. Because I do believe that many of the aspects of where we think things are maybe bending towards the negative can actually go in the opposite direction or go in a different direction if we can get people to believe that what their participation will do will be valuable and will actually matter. And I don't think people think that that matters, but a few votes would have changed the mayoral election in Idaho Falls just a few months ago. It could have gone the way you wanted it to, or it could have gone the way you didn't want it to. But a few votes would have changed one way or the other. And I think that can happen on a local level, on a state level, and on a national level if we are encouraging people to pay attention. So I know process is boring and process is, not glamorous. But process sometimes is everything to how we change what is going on in our community and in our nation and in our world.
Thank you. And have a question for her? I want to.
I have a comment.
Okay.
Years ago, and it's probably 40 years plus ago, a fellow by the name of Joe Nobo spoke in the Bonneville High School out here. And my wife and I went out to that talk that he gave. And he was an immigrant from Cuba when he was just a young boy, like 10 or 11 years old. His parents were university professors in Cuba. It was right at the time of Castro's takeover. But he made an interesting comment, which goes along with your comment. And he said, the United States helped set Cuba up initially with a constitution like ours and everything, and they handed that over to them. But then he said they lost that because the people would not participate in the government. And I thought the same thing you did when I heard that only 35% of the people had voted in the mayoral candidate race out of those that were eligible, that were registered as voters. It's a very real thing that is very applicable to not only Idaho Falls, but across the nation. If we don't have enough interest to take part in the elections and all of these things that have to be going on, we will lose them, just like Cuba did.
I live up in the Ammon Hills and try to vote for the mayor. We got there, and on the ballot was only one thing to vote for. And I just said, what the heck, I wanted to swear. I'm like, well, what is this? I wanted to vote for all the things we're supposed to vote for. And she said, I know. You can vote for the fire commissioner, and that's it. What happened? Like, I don't know what that's about.
Well, on that bit with you, do you live within the city limits of Idaho Falls?
I guess not.
and you don't, and or do you live in the city limits of Ammon? No, and if you don't live within the city limits of the city, then you don't get to vote. I don't live in the city limits of any city, so I don't get a vote either. Okay, but we have to recognize that. But we probably know people that do live in the city, and we need to work to influence them and to have them pay attention. A comment in politics is, and I've heard it and I'll say it a little bit, is if you're not at the table, you're what's on the menu. And there's a lot of truth to that. And I've played in politics a little bit over the last few years, and you know, it is ugly. And it is not what you would hope or what you would think. And it is sad. I'll just say that. And it is imperative, in my opinion, that we all recognize the reality of these things. And you do need to become involved. One thing that I've heard, I haven't verified it, but I'm sure that I'm certain, is this mayoral race in Idaho Falls was a surprise to many. But one of the biggest things that came out of, and we had to, you know, we had some forums here and all that with the mayoral candidates and, you know, city council people and all that. But one of the big things that came out of that was lack of communication and the inability to communicate with the city and the city council. I understand, however, now the city council has actually decided that their meetings are going to be on Thursdays, and I don't know whether it's every Thursday or whether it is, but it's going to be at 6:30 in the evening, and they're going to live stream and do this type of stuff. And so that is a positive thing of just the contentious mayoral race that actually helped the city, help the people of the city if they hold on to that. And what that is that gives you as an opportunity for, you know, as a citizen to watch what's going on, see what's going on. If you don't like it, start taking some actions and figure out how to do some things. So even I look at it like this: whether or not the mayoral race turned out the way you wanted it to or not, there's some positives that have occurred from that. And so we got to get out and vote and make some things happen. Be sure to yourself get out and vote, and your friends and family. Any other questions, or you going to come up here? My boss.
Yeah. So I don't know how you guys feel about our legislators and how they feel about us. I feel that they don't think we're very intelligent because we don't get involved. And so they make decisions in Boise for us, and it makes me very upset. And I think the only way that we can get across to them that we know what we want is to start paying attention and letting them know we are watching them. So it was pretty clear last week when they talked about the grocery tax. One was asked, what do your constituents think? Those aren't the exact words, but what does your constituents think about this grocery tax repeal or to keep it? And he said, well, they just don't understand it. But he wasn't willing to explain. He was willing to make the decision for us. I think we need to step up, people, and start paying attention and let them know we're watching them. So that's just what I say.
Yeah, better give her a hand or I'm going to be in trouble.
So what do you think about the new 3% city sales tax that they're proposing?
Yeah. I think another opinion of mine is it's like when I was working out at the INL, and I worked with a lot of scientists, and they had to write papers. That was their thing. If they weren't writing papers, they weren't doing a good job. Well, it seems like our legislators think that when they get to Boise, they got to make laws. Let's repeal some laws. Let's get rid of some old laws. We don't need more laws. We just need things for the people. That's my opinion.
What was the comment?
Who proposed that 3%? Britt Rabel. And
Britt-
it was introduced last year, and they're discussing it this year. And they're trying to implement it. And as I talk to our city administrators, they're all going, that's exactly what we need.
So they are for it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think the average citizen is going, we pay enough taxes.
I didn't think that a surcharge on the sales tax was allowed by the counties. I know they are in Utah, but I didn't know that the counties had the right to put a surcharge on and to do their own administrative things and do stuff with that tax thing. So anyway, I'm confused.
It's a city tax, not a county.
Okay. Well, I think right now we probably don't have the expertise here to answer those questions. And so what I would ask on that is, how do we validate that? Okay, and let's see what it is and find out what's going on. That's important. But I'm going to jump into something that is, in my mind, very reflective of what Cindy just said. And it's Idaho HJR 4. It's a resolution. It's a joint resolution that will be on the ballot this November for us all to vote on. And it is a constitutional amendment. And what that constitutional amendment says is that any laws having to do with marijuana, what it does is it grants the legislature exclusive authority and prohibits citizen-initiated measures on marijuana, narcotics, and psychoactive substances. And it's an amendment. This is right out of it. And this is the amendment. It's a constitutional amendment to limit the people's rights. I put this on to have an initiative. What they're saying is that the legislature are the only ones smart enough to decide legislation on marijuana and these things. You are not. And so they want a constitutional amendment to change that. Now, you look at that amendment, it does nothing about prohibiting marijuana, or it is not a marijuana pro or negative law. All it is, it says you cannot have the initiative to do something. You are not smart enough. Is that what Cindy said? You are not smart enough. I have a problem with that. The one thing that they don't tell you is on an initiative. It's like this grocery tax initiative. Let's just say it gets passed and all that this year and everything. On an initiative, the legislature can reverse it the next section. Okay, if they want to step up and they say, no, you as a public, and as a citizenry are dumb and stupid, they can reverse it. So if there's an initiative that gets out on marijuana and whatnot, and for whatever it may be, they decide that it was wrong, they can reverse it. But no, they're not. They are after taking an initiative, a right for the public to have an initiative to say we want to make our own law. They're taking that away from you. And I'll just say this, okay, this is marijuana is a big deal and all this, and we just want to do this and make sure that, okay, well, I understand that, but marijuana this time, what about the next one? What about the next one? They are there, and I'll go back to what Cindy says. They are there to represent you, not to circumvent you and cause you to, not to circumvent you on these things. And I believe on this thing, they are trying to gaslight you or actually deceive you into giving up some of your rights. And so, read HJR 4. You can't, your legislature's already got it, and it's going to be on the ballot. Talk to your friends. This is wrong. And fact is, talk to your legislature if you can and say, did you vote for this? Are you okay with this? And if they say, well, yeah, we think so, get them out of office, because they're voting totally against something that you have the right to do, and they're telling you that they are smarter than you when it comes to this. There, I'll get off my soapbox there. Any other comments on that? Real quick, I actually have a list of stuff that I would grouse on, so. Okay, come on up.
So how many of you guys have heard of americasdigitalshield.com?
Talk into the mic.
Oh, sorry. How many of you guys have heard of americasdigitalshield.com? Okay. Well, Dr. Robert Epstein, he's a senior researcher with the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology. He's written many books, published many articles, Harvard PhD, graduated in the 1980s. He became concerned between early 2000s, not early 2000s, around 2012, that big tech companies were manipulating the public. Not only in this country, but in countries around the world, and actually changing elections. So he conducted a series of experiments to see if he could validate his hypothesis, and he did. So if you go to that web page, you'll see what his results are. But he's shown that, and he's a Democrat, he's not a Republican, he's a Democrat, and he's supported Hillary Clinton, for example. But he shows that without Google's influence, Trump would have easily won the 2020 election. And yeah, you should, one of the articles that he wrote, I know you can't see this, but it says Google's triple threat. It's an article that's out there on the web. You can find it. But it all talks about the experiments he's done and his research. But he believes that basically the big tech companies are a threat to democracies around the world, especially the United States, and that they've unduly influenced the public and biased the public to vote a certain way and to change their minds so that they vote the way Google wants them to, because their search indexes are not made public. So when they present results to you in your web page, you do a search for something, those results are based on the order in which they'd like to show them to you, right? And so there's some bias in there. And that's how they influence people. And those results they present to you, they're only temporary. I mean, as soon as you're done with that web page, they're gone. So he set up experiments around the country with many different groups to capture those, he called them ephemeral results, what happens when you do a search on something, and essentially prove that there's a lot of bias in what Google is doing, as well as Microsoft, Facebook, and other big tech companies. And he testified to a U.S. Senate subcommittee in 2019 to that effect as well. But I don't think anything's been done about it.
Okay, what was that website again?
americasdigitalshield.com.
America's Digital
Shield.
Shield?
Shield, yeah.
S-H-I-E-L-D?
Yes.
americasdigitalshield.com.
Right.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, you know, we have a lot of influence happening in Idaho. You want to come up, or you want this?
So if I could just ask a question about that. So I've been really interested in this issue around whether or not influencing people in an election to vote one way versus the other versus actually changing votes or manipulating votes is the quote-unquote threat to democracy. So I understand that the big tech companies, and I'm not trying to excuse them in any way, shape, or form, but I understand the big tech companies have done all sorts of things to try to influence people or not be able to, or not get certain stories through to people that should be getting through to people, like Hunter Biden's laptop, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems to me that we've always had that in our system, and all countries that are democracies have always had that in their system. So, 100 years ago, you might have had an editorial page at a big newspaper, or influential person like the quote-unquote Citizen Kane kind of person that might have influenced people to vote a certain way versus the other. But people at the end of the day always have had their own ability to do their own research, do their own thinking, talk to candidates, listen to candidates, etc. What I worry about is not necessarily that so much as the fact that we are not paying attention to the manipulation of actual votes. So not having people be able to, or not looking at mail-in ballots as very, very susceptible to manipulation and fraud. Ballot harvesting, people who may not necessarily be eligible to vote, voting. I think those are things that are very much a threat to the election integrity and the process that allows us to actually have representation that we should have, and allows us to be able to have confidence that the people that we're voting for are actually the people that are getting elected. So, sorry, I don't mean to undermine your point, but I think influencing people to vote one way or the other based on how they want to vote is not the threat. I think the threat is that we don't necessarily know whether our elections have the integrity that we would want them to have.
Want to comment? Or I can.
So yeah, those are all good points, but that's not just what Google's doing. They're doing a lot more than that. For example, he has evidence that Google would send out reminders, for example, to Democrats to go and vote, whereas he wouldn't do it to Republicans. And they would target different areas and different demographic groups like that. And I agree with everything he said. It's just that, social media and Google, it's pervasive. It's everywhere now. It's kind of not things aren't like they were 20 years ago when we didn't have mobile phones really, or when mobile phones were just coming out. Yeah. But no, I agree with everything you said.
Well, I have a comment. I think you're absolutely right. And that started, it's always been that the newspapers had a tremendous voice in influencing the people and what happened in the politics and so forth. Look at Woodrow Wilson and Roosevelt and all of that. That the media had a big part to play in what happened back in those years. Of course, now it's much more powerful with Google and all these other social media platforms that we have. What I am concerned most about is, of course, election integrity is an issue too, and that's been in the news a lot. But what I'm really concerned about is, what do we base, as a citizen, what do we base our decisions on? When we are confronted by a politician and his ideals and what he proposes to do, how do we know whether what he is proposing is the right thing? That makes a difference as to what kind of a result we get from our politicians. If we don't know the Constitution, for example, and he is proposing things that are against the Constitution, do we stand up and say, absolutely not, I'm not going to vote for him because he doesn't know the Constitution, he's proposing things against the Constitution? You have to have a basis for your belief. And in this country, in our republic, it should be the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of Idaho. And if we aren't aware of that and familiar with what's in those documents and the founders' documents and so forth, how are we ever going to make the right choices? It really falls back on us again, doesn't it?
I'll make a comment too, obviously. I think that, influence occurs, and that's how politicians decide how they're going to vote, when where they get influenced. Is it influenced by their constituents? Is it influenced by a special interest group? Who causes the influence? Who's doing the influencing? I would say that social media, Google, these type folks, can influence purposely just as bad as election integrity by not telling you the whole story. And I think it's important to know the whole story. I'll just use the Hunter laptop as an example. If the Hunter laptop was better well known and the issues and whatnot with it by all that, would the election have been different? It's hard to say, but I'll bet that it was guaranteed, that maybe so. You can look at today and go to the various news sites, and you'll see the difference of things that are being covered and that are not being covered. And so that's manipulation of data. What do they want you to know? The things that are going on in Minnesota are being reported on heavily by some stations and not at all by others. Okay? It's hard to know what's truth. And that's why it's important that we look at all sorts of things, because before I go to the voting booth, I need to understand, at least in my mind, what's truth, and what do I want, and who can be, and who's going to best represent me. And if I've only been told one thing on one side, then that's a problem. It may only take one or two little things to know something a little bit different that would totally change my mind, but if those things are kept from me, that's a problem. So we do need to be broad-based. We talk about this, and we talk about it from a national scale per se, but Idaho is not immune. Idaho is not immune at all. In fact, I mentioned it. I've mentioned it before. Idaho is one of the fastest growing states. We are known as being a red state, a strong Republican state. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. It's hard to say anymore, okay? But there are people that are coming here that are leaving states that they don't like, either to escape or to come in and influence Idaho, okay? And the bet about coming in and influencing Idaho is absolute. To think that we are in our own little world and we're living fine and dandy and that we're immune from it, we are naive and we are foolish. That's my opinion. Okay? We need to be aware of what's going on. I'm going to get myself in trouble here. We actually had some people a few weeks ago, and when I come talk about the 50 States One Israel conference. Okay? And that was where the Israeli government paid to have 250 U.S. legislators go to Israel Okay, all expense paid. And from my understanding, all of the 250 legislators took it, went on it. Five legislators from Idaho went. And the intent is 5 legislators from each state. Okay. Why? Why should Israel pay to have these legislators go and free? Nothing is done for free. It's done to influence. I found out recently that there's an organization called the Idaho Israeli Alliance. It's very, very active in Idaho. Okay. Fact is, one of the legislators that went is part of that and everything. And they have a few bills that they would like to have passed. And one of them was printed and I think it was being heard in committee today. It's H 489. It's a mask bill. It's an enhancement bill. And what it does is says if you commit a crime and you're wearing a mask, you're going to get another fine, and you're going to get maybe some time in jail. So it's an enhancement bill. Okay? So my question is this. Why would this organization, and I actually have an email that shows them asking this, why would an organization be interested in that bill? And making it so that if you decide you're going to go out and commit a crime, you're going to wear a mask. And you wear a mask, you're going to get slapped double. Okay? Well, I've also heard that same organization is looking into trying to get some legislation in place that would essentially limit your free speech rights, your First Amendment rights. And so that if you say something bad about Israel, okay, can be construed as a hate crime or something like that, and therefore, you can be persecuted for that. Well, if you do that wearing a mask, how do I know it's whomever? Well, I find out whomever, I'm going to hit you twice. My question is this: why should any country, and I'm not being anti-Israel, anti-anything like what, or anti-Semitic, I'm nothing. Why should any country be interfering at all in our legislature and in Idaho's laws? And I am currently writing a letter to the Attorney General, Labrador, and I'm going to ask him the question, because the question came up, is these free trips, and this one to Israel is just one I found out of many that happens all the time, all these free trips. The question was asked, how are they not bribes? How are they not bribes to our legislators? And I'm going to send that letter to the Attorney General and ask him, how is that not a bribe, or how does that not compromise that legislator? I think it's important. I think it's important for us to know. I doubt if there's a law against it, but is there an ethical thing behind it? I don't know. I think we need to be concerned, and we need to pay attention to what our legislators are doing, who is influencing our legislators, and for what end. And are they doing it to protect you? I guarantee that's not. I bet you dollars that's not happening. Okay? The influence is to benefit the influencer, obviously. It's not it's not to benefit you. They're not looking out for you. We need to pay attention. I'll throw this out there. Bayer Pharmaceuticals. Okay, they have a phosphate mine down in Soda Springs. Okay, they employ about 800 something people, I guess. Okay, and they're a very major source, employment force down there, and it's something that the Soda Springs needs. Bear has been pushing over the last couple of years for an immunity bill, is what it's called, and it's if you accept the EPA's label for their herbicide Roundup, basically glyphosate, then Bayer gets immunity from lawsuits, from anything that happens. And so, fortunately, that bill has not succeeded the last couple of sessions. I can almost guarantee that it will come up again, because it came up nationally. A similar bill came up nationally, and was supposedly supposed to be part of this last big beautiful bill. My understanding is it got pulled. For it to even be considered by our legislators, I think is wrong. No company should have immunity from the harm that their products can do. No company. Pharmaceuticals can put out poison every day. And what? They have immunity because they've been granted it. Why are there so many vaccines on the vaccine schedule for your kids? There's 70 something I heard. I don't know what they are. It's because they have to be on the schedule so they have immunity. And of course, the vaccines are a lot of money. We have to pay attention. Who's influencing our legislators? Like I say, I have a list of stuff here that, and a lot of it is what's happening legislative-wise. This is an election year. We're going to go for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, as well as a lot of legislators. Pay attention to them, okay? Because they will affect you, guaranteed. This HAR 4, that's going to be on the ballot. I think that is an absolute. I would like to find out every legislator that voted to make that happen, and get them identified so that they get out of there. That they are going totally against the citizens of Idaho with that. And we need to stand up against those things. There's an initiative right now, another initiative trying to get a lot of petitions to repeal Idaho abortion laws. And my understanding, I haven't read the petition, I don't know what it is, but they go in basically and they redefine the law and all that. And from what I've heard, it is very, very impactful. And will basically negate all of the Idaho's abortion laws. Need to pay attention. The grocery tax repeal. There's an initiative going out on that. We had a discussion last week on that, and it was quite interesting. And I sent out a note and I'll say the Representative Furness was very gracious and everything, answered all my questions, whatnot, during some emails back and forth and some stuff. I appreciate him. Ron Nate did the same. So we have some more discussion on that, but need to pay attention. If you're for the repeal, you need to go out and you need to help sign that petition, get that going. If you're against it, tell people don't to sign. I mentioned legislation limiting our First Amendment rights. This goes along with that mask bill. And again, I'm not trying to beat up on Israel and whatnot, but they're out in front with these bills, trying to get these bills passed. And my understanding is Florida just passed an anti-hate speech bill or something like that. I heard, and I don't know, and this is hearsay because I haven't read it myself, but I guess it's a bad bill. Limit your First Amendment rights. They're chipping away at your rights, folks. We have to pay attention to them. And this is not just Israel. If Israel can do it, so can anybody else. Idaho and East Idaho has water issues, significant water issues. East Idaho was about shut down 2 years ago and almost bankrupted. We have to remember that there's one individual that makes that decision, and that individual is not elected. And one individual can destroy the economy of East Idaho. That's a problem. You need to pay attention. We need to come next week and listen to what's going on with water and stuff. Pay attention. And it's not just East Idaho. It is Idaho's water all over. I was talking to somebody in North Idaho. By Constitution, Idaho, the state, owns the water. But you have companies that manage the water. North Idaho, my understanding is several of those companies that manage the water and stuff, it's like the canal companies here and whatnot, have been bought up by the Black Rocks, these type things. They now control Idaho's resource water up there. Is that what they're supposed to do? They're there. Those companies are there to make a profit for them. They're not there to help you. Fraud occurring in Minnesota and elsewhere. We hear a lot about that. To think that we're immune, again, I think that we're naive. I've talked to people down in, southern part of the state and whatnot. A lot of things going on down there that we don't know about because we don't live there. Idaho is not immune. And you know what? I'm not being I sound depressing and all of this, but you know what? It takes all of us, and we can start making a difference. We just have to stand up. We already talked about election integrity. One thing that come up is the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, I heard this the other day, says an Illinois congressman can sue the state over mail-in voting laws. And my understanding was that this may be wrong, but he lost because of some late mail-in votes that came in. So, again, I don't have any evidence of it, but to think that Idaho is immune from these things, we are naive. We're fooling ourselves. And she's exactly right, okay? We need to be paying attention to them. The Save Women's Sports is what is known as the case that, our Representative Ehart actually is pushing, and it's being heard by the Supreme Court. It was heard by the Supreme Court. And Raul Labrador, Attorney General, is on all that. And it's transgender issues. Boys and girls bathrooms. Boys and girls sports. I don't know whether you read some of the things, some of the testimony that some of the women, said about that, but it's sad. Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh made a comment. I think it was him. I'm trying to remember what it was. But essentially it was this. Some girl is brokenhearted because she was physically unable to make the cut because a transgender he was physically more capable than her. She is hurt. She never got on the team. She never was able to even hardly be given the chance. Okay? This is just a list. I sat down for about 5 minutes and came up with. I'm grateful for everybody being here tonight. But we can't run away, or we can't hide from what's happening in the world. and what's happening in Idaho. All of these things here are happening in Idaho. I can guarantee in one way or the other. Maybe not to the extent as, fraud that's occurring in Minnesota. I doubt that's happening. But to say that Idaho's immune, oh, we're Idaho. And not happening here. I think you're fooling ourselves if we say that. So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I did mean to get on my soapbox and whatnot because a lot of these things are very important and dear to me. I have a new grandson, and this makes a difference to me. And so I'm going to push and I'm going to stand up for Idaho's going to do what we can. So I've taken enough time. Does anybody else have some comments or questions or anything? Yes. Okay.
Well, one thing I do almost every day is listen to Positive Thoughts by Louise Hay, and she talks about. Now, Louise Hay went through a very hard life where her own, I believe it was a stepfather, raped her from age 3 to 15 or something, and then so that's kind of the level. But she was able to overcome all that and forgive. To be able to forgive, that is a very difficult thing to do. But she's taught me how to forgive, and it's really powerful. So her thoughts are very simple, they're very easy, and they're filled with gratitude. And my life has just been very lifted up. Now, I've looked into the deepest, darkest holes for a long time, since 2011. So her words have this power to lift, and I think there's a certain law that God has placed where when we thank and think of things that are what we want, God then puts in place things that happen in our own personal life to bring it about. And the great thought leaders, all of them know this. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Napoleon Hill, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, all of them have practiced this and been able to have phenomenal life and power and motivation to be able to lift everything up to a better, higher place where we can have gratitude and go to God to be able to get the outcome that we want. Because if we focus on the news and the negative and this, that's what we'll get more of. I know it seems simple and weird, but in my own life, I have found that when I wake up and get out of bed at 3 a.m, instead of me being all ticked about my back aches, I think of all the things I'm grateful for that are going right in my life, and it's phenomenal because it takes the negative and it pushes it away. It's still there, there's still bad stuff happening in the world, but when you focus on the gratitude part, all of a sudden you everything in your life transforms and changes, and I'm very excited about tapping into the great minds of Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn was Tony Robbins' mentor, and it's exciting stuff, and we have a lot of opportunity in America. There's no other greater place than America on the earth, and it's an exciting time to be alive. So I think if we focus on that, I think we might be a little more powerful. We have a lot more power than we think we do. So we can't defeat and cower to what all these other evil people do, but we certainly can do quite a lot. And yeah, there is power in the Republic, and you're right. We just have to get knowledge and keep going, and yeah.
And the thing that I think, and I just love what you just said, is I get to myself and I say, and all this, but the reality of it is this: is we can do this. We can affect a change, and we are positive, and from the grace of your God, okay, and whatnot, we can make things happen. And we need to recognize the negatives that are out there. And those are things that we have to overcome, but we can overcome. And I personally believe that our charge is that we need to overcome those things. You know, it is our charge, and to be positive and to be able and recognize that we can. We don't just let them happen, but we can take and do things to cause the positive change. And collectively, we can do that together. Okay? Yes, okay.
So I want to congratulate you for making those comments. I think we should spend as much energy coming forth with what we stand for and not let that what we're against overrun what we're going to stand for.
Exactly right. Somebody said to me, hold the course, stay the line, whatever it was, you know? Hold the line, stay the course, okay? And that's what we're doing. Okay, this is our focus. We got to recognize all this is going on, and what do we stand for? And that's what we are. So, anybody else have any comments? Okay, Ken has.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that we do have a lot of elections coming up, and most of our East Idaho legislatures vote with the Democrats. We also have all our PCOs coming up this year, and 2/3 of our Bonneville County Republican Central Committee vote with the Democrats. So we need to get some good people running. So just be aware if you want to run in your precinct or know people that want to run, we've got to get some good people running this year. And I think it's important also that we remember that we should vote for the policy, not the person. I think too many times people vote for their friends when really their policy isn't what they want. And we need to remember that when we're voting.
Absolutely. Okay, Brett?
Just a couple of comments on what you brought up earlier when you talked about the phosphate bill. What you have to look at is these politicians. There's politicians voting for this stuff. Another one you brought up to me a couple of years back was the resource bill. You know, a bill that I believe it was House Bill 173. I don't know if I got the number right or not. It was back in 2022. It was a bill that forbids foreign nations from buying land, water rights, and mineral rights in Idaho. Well, the bill failed unanimously at the House. The governor signed it, but 9 senators voted for it. Now, you have to look at not just how these legislators are voting, but take a look at where they get their money. They're getting their money from these guys. When they get money from businesses, corporations, in-state, out-of-state, and foreign, then you have to ask yourself is why? Why are these guys getting so much money, not from their constituents, but from these other folks that don't even live here? So that's one thing you need to look at when you vote. Is you can look at somebody, you can listen to their promises. Words don't speak, action does. And when I see 9 senators voting for a bill like that, I about fell over. I thought it was insane. But it happened. I believe it was 2022.
Yeah, but we can make a change. Any other questions? I have one. How many like this little session, I guess a little gripe set, the opportunity to do this? Should we do it more often? Say again? Well, like I say, we could have filled this spot, but what I wanted to do is hear from you, and stuff. Did you have a question, Dave? Or? Okay, so, Nan?
It turned out a lot better than I thought it would. It was great to hear everybody's opinions. I liked it.
Well, I think it's important. I think it's important to hear what you have to say, and what's on your mind. because we can have a great speaker come up here all the time, and it may be something that you like, and that'll pique your interest. But and we do get a lot of views and a lot of people watching, and a lot of politicians, I'm sure, watch us. Okay, but by you being able to be here and say, this is what my problem is, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about that, that I think carries a lot of weight to a lot of people. When we first started Stand Up for Idaho, and we weren't even started, we were just people trying to figure out what the heck was going on. Started out saying, am I the only crazy one? And literally that was how I first started. I walked to my neighbor's house, and I really didn't know them at all and everything, and I said, I got a question for you, and I just don't know whether I'm crazy or not. And I said, or whether I'm the only crazy one, and I said, these were my concerns. And their comment was, ours too, come on in. Okay, and we talked for a little while, and they said, we need to do this again next week, and I'm going to bring some more people over. And so they brought some more of their friends over. And that's how this started. Because collectively, we all know a lot more than I do, than we do as individuals. And collectively, we can all make the change. So I think that we may try this. I mean, if we don't get a lot of participation or whatever like that, we may cancel it. But I was thinking about maybe the last meeting of a month. Try to do this maybe once a month. I don't have any problem filling spots. I mean, really we don't. In this election season and all this, they're calling me already. Okay? So fact is, 2 weeks from tonight, there's a gentleman named Josh Roy out of Lewiston that is actually going to run against Risch. And he's going to be here to talk. So the political season's open. But anyway, we can fill the spots. They're coming to us. But I think it's important to hear what's on your mind. So that worked for everybody for a while, and get your friends and neighbors and whatnot to come and talk. And let's talk. Let's have a conversation so that we know what we can do and how we can make things better for us all. Pardon? Maybe every other month? Well, I don't know. Deb?
I think we all look at how our senators voted on certain things, and being this is coming around to election season, we should be, if we get those senators or whoever's running for office and say, I see you voted for this bill that was to deny or to vote that it's okay for foreign companies to purchase our land or water rights. Why did you do that? Just, we don't need to be rude, but the bills we see that they voted against what we feel, ask them why. We need to know. And if we have any, and if this is going out to all kinds of other people online that are watching, they may not be in our district or our precincts or our areas, but if they feel the same way we do, why? Why did you accept that trip to Israel? Who paid for it all?
We do need to hold them accountable, and like I say, and I'll just to carry on, I found out that Israel is just one of many, 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 many. Okay, and so the big question is, and in my mind, is, are there any issues with that? And I will actually, I'll get my letter. I hopefully will have it done within the next day or so. I'll send it to Labrador. And I'll post it so people can see it. I am redoing our website, in the process of actually upgrading Stand Up for Idaho's website so that we can have a lot of this content and stuff on there So it'll be easier for us to find and people to go to and all that. So, okay, everybody. Well, I'm going to let you go. It's 8:15. Let out a little early. Keep an eye out. We will have this again. I don't know whether it'll be the end of next month or we'll do it every other month or whatnot, but I appreciate y'all. Be safe, take care, and pay attention to what's going on around you. It does matter. Thank you so much. A big hand to